We know chronic stress can be detrimental in all areas of our busy lives, but through better understanding ourselves, we can learn to sustain our well-being without stigma or that judgment. Licensed psychologist Allison Cantor-Agliata is here to help us with tips to regain our power and protect our physical and mental health. Bloom Health Club starts now.
From the Stream Center, welcome to Bloom Health Club, sponsored by Monticello Family and Sedation Dentistry.
Welcome to Bloom Health Club. I'm your host, Amber Freeman. Today, we're joined by licensed psychologist Allison Cantor-Agliata, and we're discussing something we all probably know all too well, stress, and more importantly, what it does to us both physically and mentally, but most importantly, how we can fix that. Dr. Agliata, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Amber.
Well, stress is something that I think as soon as we hear the word, we all have a tendency to clench up and think of all the things that are stressing us out in that moment. You've dealt with some really high stress situations and people that are in some of the most stressful situations I think anybody can possibly be in their lives. Can we talk a little bit about you and your background?
Sure. So I started my career as a military psychologist. I was an Air Force captain as a psychologist. And so that's really where my journey began in terms of dealing with high trauma, high demand profile cases and people. And I've really grown to have a love for working with this population. They're driven, they're dedicated, they want to be the best possible person that they can be. And then I've kind of moved into the private practice sector where we specialize in working with first responders, military folks, and high demand professionals overall.
I mean, a lot of these situations are life or death. It has to be pretty intense. And I can only imagine the situations that they're dealing with every single day takes a toll on not only your body, but your mind.
Absolutely. I mean, the clients that we work with are high demand, and so they're exposed to trauma on a continuous basis. You know, we're not just talking small chronic stress, we're talking about acute stress as well, which can be kind of a high critical incident scenario. And so they're managing both of those things at the same time often. And then also just high demand professionals, think of judges and things like that, who are also have a lot of vicarious trauma, we call it, which is they're handling cases or looking at pictures or evidence that can also be very upsetting and add to that stress level overall.
And so often we don't even think about this. We see a situation or we hear something or see something on the news, and it's just a fleeting moment for us.
Right.
Forgetting that these people deal with these situations every day.
That's right. And so it does take its toll after some time. We call it the allostatic load. Something that's been researched heavily is that the idea that you have some physical and psychological wear and tear on the body when you're constantly having to adapt. People who are in these situations tend to be a bit more hypervigilant. They are overly exposed to the negative parts of the world and what human beings do to one another. And so we really want to take a zoom out and a big perspective and remember intentionally that there are beautiful, wonderful things in the world as well, because you have to purposefully balance that when your job is really narrowly focused on the difficult parts.
I love that you say purposely balanced, because it's that living with intention and realizing, because it's not only these people that are on the front lines and in life or death situations every single day basically, but high achievers, people that want to be perfect, the perfectionist, and so many of us can kind of relate to that.
Yes, and those are often the people who end up in these fields, right? These are people who are determined to really be their best. They're very driven, they're motivated, and so oftentimes they end up ignoring their own stress signals. They override them just to meet the demands that are being asked of them externally.
Because I think so many people think if you take that moment to breathe or take that minute to reflect, there's somebody else that's working harder and they're going to beat you to whatever your goal is.
Right. And I guess what I want to impress upon people is that we want to be able to have sustainable work ethic, not just in the moment. So if you take care of yourself better, if you have a bit more balance, and as I remind people, it doesn't mean that you're going to have daily balance. It might mean that you have weekly or monthly balance in the big scheme of things, but that is what's going to take you longer down the road. You don't want to burn yourself out early. We know burnout leads to things like absenteeism, poor job performance. It even predicts turnover. So, both as an individual who's very driven and wants to move forward in your career, and as an employee, if you have an organization, you should be very invested in your people's resilience, not just making sure that they produce as much as possible as quickly as possible.
That resilience is key.
Yes.
And not only our professional lives, but our personal lives take a really big toll from this. And our people around us are going to feel the impact of all of this. What is it about high achievers, do you think, that leads to that tendency to burn out?
Yeah, like I said, they tend to ignore this beginning signal. So what we know about burnout is that oftentimes people feel a bit disconnected early on. So when they start to feel that burnout, they feel a little numb, they might be more irritable, and they start forgetting the basics of stress management.
Yes.
So, I tell people the early things that we need to do are really very simple foundational pieces of resilience. So we need to make sure we've gotten enough sleep. Oftentimes people forget sleep is not just about getting through the day and having enough energy to perform tasks. It's about thinking clearly. It's about making good decisions. It's about emotionally regulating yourself. When's the last time you felt really irritable, or you snapped at somebody, or you made a poor decision? You thought I did not sleep well recently, or I'm just really on edge. That's because you probably haven't left your house, or you haven't left your place of work in a good amount of time, leaving yourself time to get outside and get some fresh air, be hydrated, to be eating good foods for yourself, fueling yourself well, and to making sure you're getting some physical activity in connection with people that you love. These are basics that we need to be doing to keep ourselves balanced.
And in theory, it all sounds so great. We all know this. We know we should be doing this. Sleep, I think, is the number one thing. It's just, let's stay up one more hour and do one more task.
Watch that, Netflix show or whatever.
Yes, the reality show. Yeah, but then we pay for it.
We do.
And so often that next day when we're paying for watching that extra hour of TV, we're actually losing focus of why we're upset in the first place. We think it's something bigger.
Absolutely. And I have just found, and it's funny, I had a client recently who I was working with who went from feeling really overwhelmed at work to questioning their relationship.
Yes.
Right? So when we dissected it together, the idea was, oh, you know what? I really might have just been feeling overwhelmed in that moment. Everything's actually fine for us, and I need to drop that issue completely.
It snowballs so quickly, and it's so easily to lose sight of what actually is the nucleus of that problem.
And we have a name for that, right? We call it catastrophizing, where something starts as a little snowball, and by the time it heads down the mountain, really it's grown in size, and it tends to feel at least like it's taking over your life, like everything is kind of crumbling. Where if we really sit back and think about it, maybe take a nap or have some, a snack or get some fresh air outside or call a friend. Oh, it's totally a thing. So then we might see things in a more positive light where we can really, again, intentionally calm our nervous system, reset. I always say it's like rebooting a computer. Sometimes you got to turn it off and turn it on again for it to be functioning properly.
But it is really hard when we're so used to being so tightly knit and thinking that everything is going to be the next huge problem. What are some signs early on that we may be heading in that direction, that everything's just going to all of a sudden be that mountain when really it's not? It's just kind of something easy that we can fix.
It's a little different for everybody, but I will tell you there's some commonalities in terms of your irritability, right? Your fatigue, how you are thinking, if you're thinking more clearly, are you acting within your normal character or not? So we tell people to take care of each other, pay attention, and speak up when someone's not acting within character, of course.
But I'm guessing there's a right way to do that.
Yes, approach is everything for sure, right? 50% is approach. But those are kind of signals to yourself to take a step back too. And I think what happens is rather than taking that moment and really examining where we are in our own health and wellness and what we've invested in it, we tend to go down the rabbit hole.
Yes.
Right? We let our minds take over. We actually have a lot of control over our own minds, our thoughts, our feelings, but we rarely exercise it in a moment where we're already feeling fatigued and overwhelmed.
Yes, because that comes back to that whole thing where these are things you should be doing. You should go to bed early. You should be eating healthy. Right. That you should be getting outside and getting sunlight. But it's really easy to just kind of not do those things when other things seem more important.
Yes, and we tend to let them go when we're doing well. We kind of break our consistency and our structure. And I always say it's not a matter of getting off the horse, right? Like when we're not following our typical schedule, we're not doing all the things that we need. Sometimes we'll let those things fall away. But what you need to notice is when you're not doing well, you need to go straight back to that structure. That's the resilience. It's not falling off the horse. It's how quickly you're getting back on and getting things going, because we're really looking to build your capacity, right? We want to do these things early and often so that it's not so hard to get back into our normal structure routine that is helpful and benefits our wellness.
You know, I think what I find most comforting about what you're saying is that we actually are in control of how we deal with what's thrown at us. You hear that so often. It's not what's given to you, it's how you approach and how you deal, and you're in control of your own emotions. So we started to realize that this is happening. We know we need to go back to the basics. Do you have any tips on really reinforcing that in our minds?
I do.
Okay.
So some specific things, actually. So I really encourage everybody to take out their calendar, whether it be paper or electronic, right? However you manage things, you want to put in your 5 areas that are really basic steps for your resilience strategies, right? So we have our sleep. So you know your work schedule, put that on the paper. Then you're going to build in your 7 to 9 or even 10. Some people need 10 hours of sleep. And you want to build that into your schedule. Give yourself that extra half an hour to wrap things up, to let yourself
decompress, that's where you get
right?
lost, because you have every intention, and they're like, oh, wait, let me do this.
Right. So we have to really practice that sleep hygiene. You put in your exercise time on your calendar. You might even put in meal prep time for your nutrition. You also add your social activities to your calendar. So these are things that you should be looking forward to. And even if it's a small phone call to somebody that you need to catch up with, it's important that you maintain these connections to feel it. There really is something about having your own village. So if you don't have one, you really need to work on expanding that village in some capacity.
And having your people.
Yes. And then lastly is your mindfulness. So again, this is a way that we feed our souls. This could be anything from art and music, working out or being in nature for people. It could be your faith, all of these things that kind of feed us and help us to feel like, yeah, this is what I'm in it for.
That all sounds great. Again, in theory, we have to schedule that time for ourselves. Natasha, we're going to bring in our producer now. Are you good at putting something on your schedule and sticking to it when it comes to you? I know when it comes to work, you're fabulous at it.
When it comes to me, I do have to admit that I'm not that great at following through with it. I definitely fall under that. I can move it to next week.
Right.
I'll do that next week. And then next week all of a sudden turns into a month. And I haven't done it.
When it comes to ourselves. Now, if it were to do something for you or for you, that would be our priority. So how do we shift that into making ourselves the priority, knowing that it's going to bite us in the butt if we don't?
It is, absolutely, especially long term. And I think what most people see, right, if they're in the busiest areas of their life, their 30s, 40s, 50s, what we tend to find is that people think, oh, I've got to put my kids first, and then I have to put my partner, and then I have myself last, and I get really what's left of me. And I encourage people to turn that around. You've got to be first. If you can't take care of yourself, nobody else is going to take care of you. And you're not going to be able to take care of your partner. And then you and your partner together take care of the children. Children are actually quite resilient as well. And so, as long as they're being properly supervised and nourished, like they do pretty well on their own. So, we want to make sure that we're putting that in the proper order and really using some self-discipline to make sure that we are kind of tracking ourselves and holding ourselves accountable. It's always tough to do, but I tell people you cannot rely on motivation. You've got to go with self-discipline.
Yeah. And Dr. Agliata, I wanted to ask for anyone that's listening that may think, oh, that's easier said than done. There's no way for me to slow down. Can we talk about what are the symptoms or consequences, if you will, of unmanaged burnout? If we just we know that we're at our end, at our max, we cannot take it any longer, but we continue to kind of live in that automatic system.
Yes. And so what I would tell you is that I find when people's mental health really begins to suffer is when they feel trapped. So they feel like they're stuck in a system where they can't make changes. And so what I would really encourage for those people is start small. Do not set yourself up for failure by thinking you're going to take everything on at once. Make one small change, whether it be like, you know what, I'm going to get up just a half an hour early and have quiet to myself and meditate. That's a great sense of mindfulness, right? Or I'm going to go for a little walk outside and feel like I got some of my steps in and I did something for myself. Or I'm going to stay up a tad bit later, not too late, right? But maybe take a bath or do something where I can really begin to think about my day and be more purposeful about how I care for myself. Do it in inches. You don't have to jump in with 2 feet.
Okay, being mindful with little steps. Then.
Yeah,
Yes, absolutely.
That is very true. And once it gets to that point, I've been in situations where you just feel like all is lost and you feel completely out of control. Right. And then you start to go down that other rabbit hole. Well, what's this going to do? What help is this? And it has helped to take that mind and be back to, okay, these were my affirmations. This is what set me on this path to success to where I am, where I want to be. Why am I now not going back to that same structure that worked the first time around?
Absolutely. You have to know yourself. And that is part of growing in your own self-mastery. You know, we talk a lot about mastering resilience in our book, you know, strategies for high demand professionals. And the idea is that we want to build these basic things that are personalized on how you operate best in the world you've created for yourself. So you take those things and then you pick one of them, you start small, and then you build on that over time.
Now, you mentioned that having those connections and those people, our people, if you will, are so crucial, and that they can help us with those gentle reminders that Natasha and I laugh because we always get emails and they're saying, this is a gentle reminder, which I was like, I don't know you, so I don't know if this is or if this is more a, hey, listen to me now. But what's the right way to do that? Because if somebody says the wrong thing, that's going to set you off even more.
Yeah, I think it's okay to ask, you know, whoever it is in your life that you are asking to be a part of your accountability process, right? You want to let them know what the best way might be. For some people, it might be, you know what, I'm going to put a sticky note up on my mirror. You know, I want you to give me some encouragement throughout the day or throughout the week or whatever it might be. Or I want you to say like, hey, I have some other options for you, right? When we're going to dinner or whatever it might be. I think having the permission to step in and say something and being specific about how you want that addressed is really important. You certainly don't want to set your partner or someone like that up for failure or to begin an argument over this.
So actually put out a layout on how you want it, not to noted, right? We'll start putting that on our email.
That's right. How do you want your accountability?
Yeah, exactly. No, that makes total sense because if you talk about it before it becomes a problem, then you have a way to come up with a solution together that works without hurt feelings.
Absolutely.
Now we have some questions from our viewers.
Okay.
Are you up to answering?
Absolutely. Throw it at me.
Okay, let's start with Pamela's question. She wants to know, what is the biggest misconception you think when it comes to mental health?
Oh, I think that's an easy one for me, actually. I believe that people often feel broken because they have negative emotions. They feel that they may have some sort of disorder just because they feel anxious at a certain time, or they're depressed because they're sad at a certain time. As professionals, we have very specific criterion that we have to follow in order to give a diagnosis or a label, and we really try to actually avoid those at certain times. We want people to know that experiencing negative emotions and having adversity in your life is normal. And to be expected, quite frankly. And so if you are anxious because you're doing a big presentation or speaking in public and that's a fear for you, that's okay. That's a normal reaction to that scenario that might be new for you. If you're sad because there's grief or loss or something difficult that's happened, that's okay too. We're actually very resilient by nature. It's just when that is too long, too severe, or causing significant impairment in your functioning that we really get concerned about maybe a disorder being in place.
You know, I'm really glad you brought that up because that opens another can of worms. But I feel like so many of us want to be labeled so we're part of a group. It makes us maybe feel validated that is verified, I don't even think that's a word. I should maybe I'll put that in the group. Yeah, validated. There you go. That we're normal because we have this problem and other people have that as well. And then we fall on that label as an excuse for so many other things.
Yes, I think you do have it right there. Sometimes there's comfort in knowing you're not alone. And if we had maybe destigmatized mental health a bit more and we talked about these issues freely, people would understand that this is normal behavior. It's normal to have these reactions and these emotions and thoughts. You don't have to be part of a specific group to be a part of that. So I'm not dismissing mental health diagnoses by any regard, but I think for many of us, people who are high functioning and just have normal emotions here and there, that's pretty typical.
Ooh, and I think we often also want to maybe use those labels because we like to be able to analyze and have a pretty little bow on what everything is, but we spend more time actually going through why we're something and we're avoiding what's happening and how to fix it. It's almost kind of like talking more about the issue than what we can do to fix it.
I think overall we tend to intellectualize our own thought processes, right? We analyze them, we intellectualize them, but we don't do anything about them. And so that's really when we go back to the resilience techniques and the basic foundational pieces of our brains are built to adapt. So if we want to become more positive, if we want to deal with these things in a more efficient manner, we can build a neuropathway that is more successful and more efficient. We've just created situations, unfortunately, for ourselves. The analogy or the metaphor that I give people often is if you're going to walk across a grassy field 100 times, you are going to build a little pathway where the grass dies down and you see a little rut in there, and that's going to be the only way you go back and forth. Now I'm asking you to go the opposite direction, and you're going to maybe need a machete the first few times around to cut down those weeds in the grass, but eventually you will create a new pathway that is more positive, feels more productive to you, and really helps build your capacity in terms of resilience.
You're cutting that foundation, and it's almost like just putting that in your planner is that solid start to a foundation. So when you lose your path, you have to take that time instead of sitting there and putting a label on it and finding solutions. Okay, do we have time for one more question? Okay, fabulous. Now, here's something we kind of touched on, but Thomas wants to know, can the nervous system fully recover from this prolonged stress?
Absolutely. The nervous system is very plastic. Like I said, it can be molded over time. It's just that we have to give it a chance to catch up. So again, when we are working with high demand professionals and we are ignoring those nervous system and those stress signals, that makes it difficult for the nervous system to recover. And that's why we sometimes see chronic illness in this population over time. What we really want to do is, again, be proactive and intervene in an early manner so that we can teach these skills. They are skills. It's not something you're born with. You can develop this skill set of being resilient and building your capacity where you can manage more on an everyday basis.
It's not quite a character trait. It's something that, and
Exactly.
that's comforting to know, because the fact that we can take that back, especially high achievers, where we always want to have a solution to something and we feel like a failure if we're going down the wrong path before it manifests as something as a physical ailment or cancers. There's all kinds of things that are being attributed to stress.
Absolutely.
And this is a really, really solid foundation to starting.
So your gentle approach that you mentioned before
Yes.
in terms of reminders,
Yes.
this is a good time to be gentle to yourself, right? Give yourself a little bit of grace when you mess up or you get off track. No big deal. Just get back on as soon as you can.
And everybody can do it.
Yep.
Okay, one takeaway that you want everyone listening to know, whether they're in a high stress job or in a moment in their life where they're on vacation, because vacation can be very stressful too.
Yes, there's positive stress for sure. I think the big takeaway would be that you can build these skills yourself. This is not something, again, that you're born with. This is something that can be developed over time. You can change your mindset and you can change your situation. Particularly our high achievers and our high demand professionals, they are often on the go constantly without even a moment to stop and really think about, I've developed this life for me. I have the power to change it too. I say that's the one beautiful thing about being an adult in the United States of America, right? We have that freedom to do so. And so really taking self-ownership and deciding what we want to do and where we want to go to be our best selves.
Release those chains and take that machete and forge your own path.
That's right. You got it.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here today and for all of the advice. I think no matter where we are in life, we always need that steady reminder, as you said, that gentle nudge
That's right.
that we are in control. We appreciate you taking the time today.
Thank you for having me, Amber.
And thank you, of course, to Monticello Family and Sedation Dentistry for supporting our show and making all of this possible. You can watch our streaming show, Bloom Health Club, on Apple TV, Fire TV, Roku, Samsung TV, WFLA.com, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. See you next week on Bloom Health Club.